So what would your advice be for someone who's, thinking about starting their, niche anonymous or non-anonymous, brand page on, let's just say Twitter or LinkedIn?
Yeah, I would say don't worry too much about strategy. I feel like a common mistake people make is they'll come to me and say, "Hey, this is the niche I want to talk about. Here's my strategy. Do you think it'll work?" And number one, I don't really know. The thing about writing online is you kind of just have to do it, and your first, like probably 20 or 30 ideas will not get any traction. I think you just have to publish a lot, especially with writing. So my specialty is obviously Twitter, X. It's so easy to publish on there. Like each tweet takes 30 seconds to maybe a couple minutes if you're writing a detailed post. You should be posting all the time and just do little experiments to see what works. Don't even worry about formulating a strategy because no one will care at first. Um, so I always show people the analytics for so the other account I created is the Hunter Cold Calls account, which is like the sales parody. Um, it took about 1,000 posts for that account to gain some decent traction. Um, However, I was gaining followers right away. I think I don't have the analytics in front of me, but it was something like 100 followers within the first week. And then maybe it took after a month, I had like 400 or so, and it was kind of steadily at like 100 followers a week. So like whatever that is, 12 or 13 new followers a day, which is okay, not huge growth. I was spending a ton of time on this though, because I was basically tweeting 1,000 times over the first 2 months. So some people might have, given up or, oh, that strategy is not working. I have to pivot. I did pivot, but in smaller ways. Like I didn't ever totally change the account, but I was basically figuring out what content worked. So a lot of the posts just didn't do well at all, and some did better. So I just did more of the things that worked. But yeah, it basically took 1,000 posts to really start gaining followers and get over 1,000 followers, and then growth was much more of like a straight line up, where I started gaining 3,000 followers in a month. And I think it was after 3 months I was gaining multiple thousands of followers every month, and growth became easier. I didn't have to tweet as much because since I had a bigger audience, each, you know, I didn't have to worry about the post getting impressions and reach. So yeah, I would say you kind of have to publish at least several hundred tweets to figure out what's going to work. If you kind of have a formula or strategy formulated and you tell me, I don't know if it'll work or not, and no one really will until you just test it out. Um, it's really hard starting from zero though, because you tweet something and it gets like 7 impressions. So if it was a great tweet, no one's seeing it. So I think you also just have to reply to people more often. But it really has to be unique because I'm sure you've seen this, but the comments of most large accounts are just flooded with these stupid AI replies,
Mhm.
um, which are just super generic. And I don't know, maybe they're not necessarily AI, but they're just people like, I don't know, like in school when
Pretty
you had
sure
to
it's
go on.
AI.
Yeah, but like, okay, in school, when you had to like write, I don't know if you had to do like message boards, you
Sure.
know, so like you would have to write up something and comment on two other students' posts or something. So you basically would just say, great point, and then summarize something they said. That's basically what a lot of people do, and you're not really going to gain followers on there. You might as well, if you're doing a parody account, just post something outrageous and see what happens. I also would say for parody accounts, you can't be too mean. I think um, I was definitely a bit mean when I started the John Rich one. I think it helped with growth, but I realized also, like as the account got to 40 or 50,000 followers, I definitely would get a lot more pushback if I was mean to someone, because it was kind of like, especially if it was a small account or someone who was unknown, it would be seen
Punching
kind of
down
as,
instead of punching up.
punching down, bullying. So you really had to switch to only making fun of like Jim Cramer or, some billionaire or someone. Um, but yeah, I think, yeah, try not to be too mean because you don't want to alienate people. And parody accounts. I see a lot of, people there's parody accounts that are kind of um that grow a large audience, and then there are ones that just stay very small. I think the very small ones, they can be way too edgy. So no one who has like a decent brand is going to engage with you basically if you're like always being extremely mean to others on Twitter.
Yeah, totally. They wouldn't
Yeah,
want to associate with that. And then,
right.
probably, and you touched on this a few times, but probably the most important thing too is just the consistency. Being consistent, actually putting in the work. Because as you said, it took, 1,000 tweets, and that's from someone who was already good at it, like who had already done it. So, probably multiply that by a few in terms of like soft expectations. Um, Same for YouTube. Like it takes people years. It takes, these things take time. They really do, but it's not going to happen if you don't put in the work.